what's up, everybody? You guys ready to start talking about some internet safety? Yeah. You guys having a good time at TwitchCon? Awesome. Oh, wait! I'm MaximusRaeke, and I am a broadcaster. I do variety, and I'm also in the cyber security realm as my money-making job. And here to talk to you a little bit about what you guys can do to protect yourself on the internet. And here I've got...
Hi, I'm JessyQuil. My full-time job is as a IT support engineer, focusing on servers and security for our various locations throughout the US and the world. And I do Twitch broadcasting as a part-time sort of hobby in the evenings and on the weekends, and I focus a lot on speaking about psychology and mental health within the video games and the gaming community in general.
You guys were talking about your jobs first? I mean, you're going to put me out like that. All right. I'm TheClassifiedCast. I'm a character streamer who plays a variety of games. I'm also a senior rideshare operator and a victim of some of this stuff. So.
Yeah. And these were the absolute best photos we could find of us.
Sorry.
So a little bit we're going to talk about is why this is important. And later on, if you want to know, there's a really nice, pretty web page that shows lots of cool colors and cyber attacks happening in real time. It's not working right now, so you get a picture. Who knows? Maybe, I don't know.
Just imagine war games like.
Yeah. But anyway, just a couple things that I kind of wanted to highlight as to why this is important. And it's not just about streamers or even small streamers, large streamers. I'm going to go through a couple things through a list before we get to the meat and the potatoes. But Blizzard was DDoS in August of 2017 this year. In June 2017, Skype found a bug that allowed malicious code, which is bad stuff for you, to go through their service. If any of you are part of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Dueling Network Forum, which was a fan page, in April 2017, 6.5 million of their accounts were leaked. Also, February 2017, Funimation was hacked as well and had information leak. If you're a big fan of Hello Kitty, in 2015, 3.3 million of their accounts were leaked. And that's just kind of a quick overview to kind of give you guys some perspective. There's all sorts of stuff that this happens every day outside of the gaming realm, but I wanted to keep it kind of more towards what we like and what we're used to. So first thing I'm going to talk about here, a couple things. I'm going to talk about DDoSing, swatting, your IP address, your identity protection, and a couple other things as well. But DDoSing, which stands for Distributed Denial of Service Attack, or DOSing, which would be the denial of service attack. Same thing, it's either one or many people. But really what it is it's someone trying to make a machine unavailable to your user, kind of interrupt service to the internet. So it's similar to TwitchCon when we're all trying to get through the door in the morning, right? Remember yesterday? Basically that's what a DDoS is someone is sending network information to a machine and it can't basically process all of it at once. So there's basically a jam. And I've got a nice little silly picture. That would be a distributed denial of service attack where many machines are going to, which would be you, the victim, your computer. And that basically means that you can't get to the internet or do anything. And there's a couple things that I can tell you about. So there's some good news and there's some bad news with this. The good news is since you're usually a home user, your IP address is dynamically generated. You're not like a website where your IP address is the same all the time. So it can change. If you're really nice to your ISP, you can have them change it for you, or it'll change on its own. A couple things too is you could also use a VPN. Be careful about what VPN you choose. Make sure you know where your traffic's going and not being routed through, I don't know, Ukraine.
Russia.
Yeah. That would not be good. And there's a couple other things that you could do that are a little more technical, but usually those are the best things that they can do. The bad news about this is if you're getting DDoS or DOSed, there's not a quick fix. You just can't pick up a phone and make it stop. And like I had mentioned before, if Blizzard has a problem with DDoS, it's definitely a problem for everybody. And not an easy fix for it, unfortunately. The thing about VPNs is, depending, you get what you pay for with the VPN, so it could be really cost prohibitive for a broadcaster who's rolling in internet money. Those things cost money, and the more money usually is the better that it is. And also bad news there is it is incredibly easy to DOS someone or DDoS someone. So that's kind of the bad news with that. But a couple of things that you can mention you could do is really just have to do the best you can, hope you have a VPN, or call your ISP and make friends with them and see if they can help you.
Yeah, and be picky and choosy with the type of online multiplayer games that you play. There are things like within occasionally GTA Online and The Division where when you would join a voice chat or a public game, the host would be able to see your actual IP and they can get that information and find out your physical location or at least close to it, wherever your ISP server is in your town. And they also can just do the denial of service and you lose internet because it's just sending all that information and it can't process it.
Yeah, and we'll have some examples that can show you that whenever we talk about IP addresses here in a second. And sort of the next, overarching big thing we're going to talk about is swatting. we try and make, silly photos so it's, make it a little lighter, but some of the stuff's pretty serious. So, I mean, pretty much, if you don't know what swatting is, it's whenever someone's trying to deceive law enforcement in dispatching an emergency response based on a false report. It'd be like saying, hey, Maximus has a bomb and is somewhere. That's the kind of stuff that you would get. And it's usually associated with online harassment campaigns, as I'm sure some of you have either seen or heard about or read about some of this stuff as well. Bad thing there is it's really high likelihood of causing injury to someone or at the very least psychological harm. Because in those scenarios, it can be, a police officer knocking on your door, or it could be a SWAT team kicking in your door. And really nobody wants that. And another thing too that's kind of a side issue is it also diverts attention away from a real emergency. And there's a couple of things that you can do. And I know you guys have seen, there's been some pretty high profile swatting campaigns lately. But the best things that you can really do is before this happens, before we even get to the point of if this is happening to you, there's some things you can do that will help you out and help mitigate some of the risk here. First thing you should do is if you're a streamer, call your police department. Go down there, talk to them. At this point, they're all pretty much aware of what this stuff is, and if they don't know what it is, they want to listen. They want to learn about it. So the best thing you can do is call your local department ahead of time.
At the non-emergency number.
Yeah. Give them a call, don't call, give them the non-emergency number, give them a call, or go down there, set up a meeting with someone and just say, hey, I'm Maximus, I'm a live streamer on the internet, and sometimes people would want to call you and do these type of things to me, and here's what you can do. And some things that they can do is based on like where you live, they can add notes to your address. So if they get a call at one Maximus lane of me, doing something crazy, every time that address comes up, it'll say, hey, this person is a streamer or something, and this could be a swatting, So they can add that in to kind of help some of the tension, because if on the other end, they don't know anything except what the phone caller tells them, so they have to take it seriously anyway. Another thing that you can do is you can ask them to call you before they respond to any 911 attacks. That's not guaranteed. Some departments won't do that just for safety reasons, but especially if it's an occurrence or something that could happen easily, they'll definitely want to work with you on this stuff because they don't want to go out there as much as you don't want them out there either. They don't want to go in and kick someone's door down and have you just sitting there on the computer talking to the internet. And then we'll kind of shift here too to what to do if this happens. And I hope this never happens to anybody in this room because it could be an absolutely awful experience for everybody involved. The first and important thing is if it happens, just comply with the police. They tell you to put your hands up, put your hands up. Do what they say, because at this point it's happening, and there's really not much you can do to stop it. They'll do what they have to do, and then afterwards you can explain what's going on. More than likely, you're probably going to be handcuffed. If it's going to happen, just let them go through what they got to do and explain it. After everything, the tension is, down and they know that nothing's happening, you're just sitting there playing, Dota or whatever you're playing on your computer, and there's no one there with a gun or anything. Calmly explain to them, hey, here's what's happened. It's just me, I'm doing this thing, and then it'll help ease the tension after that. One important thing that I really wanted to talk about too is the bottom line is if somebody calls 911, The police have a responsibility to show up. Even if you do all these things, someone might still knock on your door because they have to. You wouldn't want to be in a scenario where someone says, hey, this guy named Maximus, has a gun or something like that, and you don't want them not to show up, right? So at least this way, it gives them something to go off of beforehand.
So within that, more preventative measures besides calling your police department and explaining, just like Max said a little bit earlier, is protecting your online persona. So the information of where you live, where you work, what your real name is, where your parents live, where your little siblings live, so on and so forth, isn't as easy to get for people who are just bored and want to do something for the lulz. If you do have your own personal Facebook or Twitter, separate from being a streamer, you don't want to have those things connected because you never know if your mom tags you in a post and says checking in at this restaurant or we're going on vacation here, and if her Facebook is more public and someone knows who you are because you have the same profile photo on your streamer Twitter, and they can do a reverse image and then find your personal Facebook page. This is the type of social engineering thing that a lot of information gets leaked from. So kind of trying to make sure that you do have that separation between your real life self and your online persona. Another important thing as a streamer is to, if you have a PayPal account for tips and for subscribing to other people and so on, like most of us do, your email might be your real first .last@gmail or something like that.
Don't do that.
Don't do that. Yeah, it's really easy to look into getting your own email server and having me at JessyQuil.tv and having that business email. I mean, you can also have JessyQuil@gmail.com, but having that business email associated with everything on your online persona, so people aren't able to get that sort of information. Because if they get your real name and they kind of know what city you live in, they can look up information on various websites and find out approximately where you live and your friends and family and people that you're associated with and anything that's on public record. There's a bunch of websites that do things like that. So if you do your best to mitigate that kind of issue, people who are kind of just doing this want easy targets. And so if you block them at certain easy first steps of them trying to find information about you, they'll move on to someone else. For the most part.
Yeah, and I think later on we have some specific examples of
Yeah.
websites that you can look up to when it comes to identity protection.
Yeah.
So we'll have some things that you can definitely write them down, take a look, see what your information and what's out there basically, and it'll surprise some of you really. I mean,
Go
ahead.
We did a test last night with some people we were staying with, and some of these websites had their full name, their family members, the past addresses that they've lived at, and you can literally pay money to get more information from these sites.
Marriage certificates
Yep,
and
all
all those
these
things.
things.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then we'll talk about that here in a second. And I think you mentioned earlier,
Yeah.
things like GTA Online and Division and stuff like that with IP addresses. And we're going to talk a little bit specifically about that. And we're all on the internet. We all use the internet. If you don't know what an IP address is, that's okay. Think of your IP address. It's just like the address to your house. That's you on the internet. Is what your IP address is, and that's all someone needs for a DOS or DDoS attack. They don't need anything else. They just need your IP address, and that's it. It can also be used to gain additional information about your general location, your internet provider, or information about your network even. And here's kind of an example that I used from a website that's free. And I didn't want to use a real IP address. I didn't want to, put that up there. But basically, 8.8.8.8 is something that Google owns. And this will work with any IP address. You put it in there, it tells you the country, the location, their postal code approximately. The GPS coordinates, that's not going to be an exact thing. It's really just where the ISP cuts it off. But it'll give you what town they're in. It'll tell you who owns that ISP. So you have someone's IP address. It could say Google. It could say Comcast. It could say AT&T, whatever you have. And that's just 5 seconds. You could do that all day if you wanted to, if you had IP addresses. And this is something that people that are going to do these kind of things, they know about this. It's super easy to find. And that's one thing they can get just from a set of numbers, your IP address. And you mentioned specifically the division. We talked a little bit about this last year. Is anybody here last year at our panel? Anybody? A couple of you? Cool. We've got a couple of things here that are different from last year as well. The good and the bad thing is this stuff is all still relevant because people still need to know and learn about what can happen. So when it comes to the games like The Division, and it's interesting that they put this tagline in there where it says if you check yes to disable VoIP, that it will completely hide your public IP address. And basically what the stuff is above it, that's been blacked out, I believe. There's some information there, like that black line is someone's, IP address, so they don't want anybody to know that. But basically there's free software that you can get, and if you were in voice comms with somebody, and I don't know how much you play The Division, but basically you can be in voice comms with your team. There's also a PvP area where voice comms works all over. If you're in this PvP area and you ran this program in the background, every time someone talked, it would just show you what their IP address is. It didn't go through anything else. It just transmitted that to you. So with that piece of information, that's all you would need to DDoS somebody. So that's kind of just one example. And not all games are like that. Some are, and it may be more or less important to you based on whether you're a streamer or not. Especially a streamer, if they know that you're playing, if they get into the same game as you, they can try all of them and see what happens pretty much. But if you're just a regular internet user, I think it's still important to you, but it makes it a little harder to target because they don't know really who you are there.
Yeah.
So, a couple things. What can you do to protect it? You can always call your internet service provider, explain what's going on, see if you can talk to a person, explain that you're a streamer. You can have your internet service provider require a password. Like somebody calls your ISP and tries to get information from them, you can try to put some additional security things in place with your ISP, so that way they just can't say, hey, I'm MaximusRaeke and I want to know this information, so they just don't give it to somebody because that's happened before. And best thing you can do too is make sure that anything you're using, whether stuff like Division or Skype or anything else, make sure the best you can that doesn't display your IP address. And for someone who's not in the tech world, that may be kind of hard. If you're concerned, ask me. I'll do what I can. I'll do some testing. I mean, honestly, a lot of this stuff is made it out. You can just do a quick Google search and just see what's out there, what's good or what's bad. But if you're not tech savvy and you're like, hey, I use this program, is this okay? Just DM me, tweet at me. I'll see what I can do. I'm here to help. So if not, you can always just try and find information on your own if you don't know where to go from there. A couple things too that kind of help with this is use a firewall. It kind of helps. There's a buddy of mine. Windows comes with one for free. It's not the best, but it's better than nothing. I've got a buddy of mine who he's like, I don't want to use Windows Firewall because it brings those pop-ups on my computer, and I'm just like.
Oh no.
So definitely use one. Turn it on. It's better than nothing. You don't have to go out and spend hundreds or thousands of dollars on it. You know how to configure your router at home, and this isn't just about IP address, but if someone can log into your router with just admin, you should probably change that.
Yes.
A quick funny story of how easy it is. I was watching a movie at a friend's house, and they refused to get anything higher than 3 megs down, so pretty much only one person can watch Netflix at a time. I got pretty frustrated because I was trying to watch Breaking Bad. So they didn't change their router password. I typed in admin, and then kicked their computer off their network.
So you're one of them. You're literally these people right now.
Yeah, I had to watch my show, man.
Criminal.
I told them about it. They changed it later. And that's just a silly example because I knew everybody in the house, we're all friends, and but this is as easy as it could be right there. So definitely know how to configure and change your router, at least the passwords and stuff like that, turn off the guest connection if you would like, but that's getting a little technical, which I don't want to go too far into that. And like I said earlier, protecting your IP address, using a VPN, and I think that you had mentioned to me, because I was trying to find one that was decently reliable, and I think you suggested one to me. I don't remember what the name of it
I
was,
can't
but that's
remember
okay.
the name of it either.
That's awesome.
It just
So,
runs and does my thing.
yeah, and I don't think I should be giving any specific examples of things that you should use because I don't endorse any VPN site or anything like that. So
I mean, yeah, it's there's an example of Ccleaner is a program that cleans your browser history and looks for duplicate files and clears your free space on your hard drive. It's like a nifty little program. It was recently bought by Avast, and earlier last month, their server for downloading a 32-bit program of one of their updates was targeted for a large-scale nation-state espionage attack because it is a piece of software that's used in the U.S. Department of Security and everything to be able to clean up computers. And a lot of those computers are older and they might be running on only 32-bit operating systems, so you have to get that 32-bit program, and there you go. That program was able to become like malware and spyware onto government machines. So it was a great program, but the thing is, like, the ownership changed, and there's not anything that they can really do when their well, okay, that is not true, but their upload server to be able to have people download this file got hacked, and it wasn't realized until like a few days later. So even things that you've used for years or have been recommended by fellow tech professionals can become bad within a day. So you have to be vigilant, and it's scary sometimes, and it can overwhelm you.
And unfortunately, this isn't kind of a set it and forget it type of thing. It's something that you have to stay on top of, because that one time that you don't go back and check, or I've always used this, is the time that something like this can happen. Unfortunately, so a lot of diligence is required to keep up, because you're trying to stay ahead of the people who want to get your information. So, like I said, another thing too is be cautious with suspicious links, of course, game servers. I mean, and this has happened where, let's say that, you just got affiliate status and you get an email from so-and-so game company that says, hey, we want to work with you. And I think that happened to me last year before affiliate, and I was like, oh wow, what? Somebody wants to work with me? And I was like, hold on a second, wasn't a real game company. Yeah, just take the time, and it's as easy as a Google search most of the time. Okay, what company is this? They don't have a website. That's weird. Nobody's heard of them. Oh, okay. Probably shouldn't click on their link that says to sign up for their free stuff. So that's the thing is more importantly is just being careful more than anything will save a lot of this stuff for you. And here's some stuff I think next that we're going to talk about is protecting your identity. Yeah. Yeah.
So by a show of hands, how many people here like and enjoy Twitch and the chat and the interaction and the community?
You don't like it?
Oh, sorry. I'm counting. I'm counting everybody. Now, by a show of hands, how many people like to get a photo of your house posted in chat? There's always a few.
Yeah, this is you. This is
Okay.
you right here.
So I'm like a small streamer, have fun, don't bother anybody, and I just having a regular day of streaming, and a guy who come by and he's a regular was joking around with me. He's like, oh, I bet I could find out who you are, and I was like, okay, good luck, big deal. Like it's not my face up there, like there's not a lot of information to go off of. And then I would say about 5 or 10 minutes after, there was a link from the person, didn't say anything, and I click it. And it's a picture of my house. And it's not and this is the part that still I really don't like. It's not like a wide, big shot like a real estate, like this house is $500,000. I don't live in a $500,000 house.
Internet money, man.
Yeah, I'm right on top of it. But it was zoomed in and cropped in such a way where it really felt like a person was outside of my house taking a picture. And it's a huge violation of trust and personal space and things, and it's scary, and you don't think that this could happen to me. And we all have lives outside of this. We have families and loved ones, and I have a wife and an infant son at the time, and at the time my wife was like, that's it, you're done. We're not doing this. This is not okay. It's not safe. Like, that's really scary. I didn't panic. I was just like, oh, haha, you found my house. Meanwhile, I'm sweating and dying inside because, you know, of what could happen. Fortunately, in my case, I just kept going. I ended the stream regularly. I reached out to the person, and I was like, why did you do that? How did you do that? What other stuff did you find? And he said, oh, I found your old account. And I was an idiot. I was a person that didn't realize, like, oh, make sure to have separate kind of, like how Jess and Max were saying about having your accounts not be any sort of lead to who you might be or things like that. And I had an old account name that was, it was dumb. I'll just say it. It was stupid. It was a first initial last name. It was just dumb. Because you don't think about that stuff until it happens. And what is more alarming, and I talked to him, and he'd been going through some things, and it's not an excuse for it because it was still really bad. But he found our address, where we lived before, my wife's work schedule, who's a public. At the time, she worked in a public space, so that if you found out who she was, you could find out a lot of things about her. And then he, because I'm classified and it's a big joke and a big deal, he was going to send me messages that were like cut up newspapers and like mail them to my house and like mess with me a little bit. And and I was almost with my wife. I almost wanted to just stop completely. It wasn't okay. It was really, it was scary, but it's about this stuff that he's going to talk about more, and I'm going to tell another instance of, but I guess I wanted to say that part of it.
Yeah, it's definitely important. And there's also varying degrees, and some of it is more malicious than others. And just when you said first initial, last name, made me think of this. When I first started streaming, my mom wanted to watch me, right? She wanted to support me. She made her Twitch account her first initial and then our last name. So I banned my mom. The first time she was in my chat. Called her on the phone, was like, you can't do that, Mom, please. So we'll get into this a little bit, and then we can talk more about some specific examples and why protecting your identity is important. Another word for this is when you get doxed, basically when someone looks up information about you to try and post it in a public space, usually to harass somebody. This kind of stuff can be found with web searches, social media sites, some data aggregation sites that we'll talk about. And most of the time, doxing is usually a precursor to being swatted or to a DOS or DDoS attack, which is basically the research phase. And I have a couple of just some quick tips, just some things that help protect you and some things that you may not think about. The first one on my list is please, if you stream, don't use monitor capture. You don't want an email coming from your job on your computer that says, hey, you're going to be in the office on Monday and you work at XYZ Corporation or whatever. Mm-hmm. You definitely don't want to do that. And you touched on this as well. Maintain separate accounts between streaming and your personal business. And one quick check is Google yourself. Type in your first and last name at home sometime. And yeah, you're like, please.
Yeah.
And see what happens. You know, if you find anything related to your Twitch account when you type in your first and last name, then that's a problem, and you have to do what you can to separate that. And one thing that you said too is like your PayPal account, right? If you're going to stream and you're going to accept tips from people, get a PayPal business account. It doesn't cost you anything. It's super easy to do, and it will save you a lot of heartache, because what happens is if you send a tip to my personal account, it would say, you sent a tip to, my real first and last name. And you definitely don't want that.
And also, it will have whatever address you use to sign up with, which you usually would put your home address, because if you attach your bank account and your credit card or debit card, that's what you have to do to verify your identity. And so someone can send you a $1 tip and then revoke it, but they still get the receipt, and then they can click on more information about this transaction here and find out all of that information.
Yeah, and another thing too is...
Unless you have a business account.
Yeah. Like I said, be mindful of any kind of phishing scams. sent to your email, like the fake, hey, we want to sponsor you, you know, you're a super awesome streamer from a company that no one's ever heard of. Click our link and get free stuff. Do a little bit of research before you go into it and just start clicking and trying to find out if it's a legitimate thing, because it's happened. It happens from, you know, like, I've never heard of that company. What do they make? They don't make anything. They don't make games. So definitely look into that. Some of the websites that are public data aggregation sites, and I'll just give you guys some examples here. Spokeo, White Pages, 10 Digits, People, it's PIPL, Family Tree, stuff like that. Those are websites that you go and you type in someone's name and you can pay money for more information, but it's like
95 cents.
There you go, 95 cents.
That's it for a ton more information.
It's here's this person's name, here's their address, here's their last phone numbers we have, here's possible family members, here's people they may associate with, which could be like if you were a roommate and you guys got mail at the same address, that stuff can all show up, and I've seen it show up. And the good thing with those sites is they'll have a contact information, you can email them and say, please take my stuff off of your site. Sometimes you have to sign up for the site to do that, which is kind of backwards, but most of the time they will comply with that and they'll take your information off of it, which is good. But they pay a lot of money to get this information from companies, so the best thing you can do is to check it periodically. You know, do your Google search of yourself, do your search on these data websites just to see what comes up. Do a search on your Twitch name, see if anything goes backwards, same thing, and that'll help you. Another big thing too is social networking sites. Check your privacy settings on there too. You know, if you have a personal Twitter, if you have a personal Facebook, and I'm not saying that I'm the end-all be-all security guy, because I'm not, because I'm just passionate about this and want to share this with you. When I first started out, I was so excited and I wanted to get people on my channel. I'd post it on Facebook. That's smart, right? No, not at all. It's like, hey, come watch me, person I went to high school with, and then, you know, dad, mom, and grandma or whatever. You probably shouldn't do that. And I'm not saying that you have to close down all your personal sites. I pretty much did, because I use Twitch stuff more than anything. But see who can see your info. You know, there's a lot of people, like, I'll just take Facebook, for example, or LinkedIn especially.
Oh, God.
You put your name in there and you can see where they work, you know, because your LinkedIn is your resume. It's like, here's where I work now, here's where I worked 5 years ago, here's where I graduated college from, here's, you know, this place where I gave a presentation on. You definitely want to be aware of who can see your information. You know, in most of these places you can restrict it based off of, you know, only friends can see it and stuff like that. One thing too is if you're going to have people send you stuff, like if people want to send you things that they made you or stuff like that, don't use your real address. And it seems kind of silly for me to say that, but some people don't think about that. They don't think of what could possibly happen. You know, use a PO box or something.
Or an Amazon locker, or
Right.
with your Amazon wish list, someone can order something from your wish list, and then they call the customer support and say, hey, I just want to make sure this tracking information from this registry is updated. Where is this going to? And sometimes they will actually give that address. And so if you don't have that set as your PO box, someone can get your real address from that.
A couple of things too is if you're going to use a web browser on stream, sometimes it's fun to look up stuff, laugh about it. Consider using like private browsing or
Just a
incognito
whole
mode.
another browser. So like you do your
Yeah.
personal stuff in Chrome, and then you do all of your Twitch stuff in Firefox.
Yeah, the last thing you want is to start typing in an email address and it pops up, oh, here's the email addresses you've used here before, and it's like first name dot last name at whatever company you work at. You definitely don't want that. Something else that people tend to not think about, and this happens to me occasionally, if you're going to answer your phone, if you have to take a phone call or have an in-person conversation while you're streaming, mute your microphone.
And cover your mouth.
Yeah, I have the worst issue with, like, I'll get food delivered when I stream, and I don't know why they can't find my address. I guess maybe it's good, but every time it's like, pizza guy's like, where are you? And it's one of those things that if I just sat there and talked on the phone, one, they could probably hear what he's saying, and two, they could probably hear exactly what I'm saying. So that's another thing that you should think about. If you have to step away, mute your mic, make sure they're not seeing what you're saying. And it sounds like a lot of this stuff is like, man, I have to do all this. You know, most people are great people, but it takes one bad person to listen in when you're ordering a pizza and trying to direct a pizza guy to your house. I mean, that's all it could take. And one thing I want to touch on earlier is educate your family and your friends, because they want to support you on these platforms on social media and Twitch and stuff like that. But kind of let them know. I had a distant relative, I think like a second cousin, who was so excited that I was streaming because they love Twitch but never knew that I did it. And their first message to me was like, "Hey, Mr. So-and-so," and it was my last name. And I was like, "Ban, okay."
Try again.
And it's like, "Hey, I'm gonna slide into your DMs here. Please don't do that, and here's why." So if you've got family members that want to support you, that's great. If they're not familiar with the platform, educate them, because you don't want that to happen.
I want to just touch on the PayPal and the thing and the information that people get from that, because I have a friend, Matt Alice, who was friends with somebody on stream. You know, you play games and you hang out and you chat and stuff, and we all go through things and we have issues and we like to reach out to each other for support and help. And this particular person was continuing to do that, and at this point she's like, "You know what, maybe you should just get some of your own help." And the person became very angry and was like saying he's going to kill himself and how it's going to be her fault and all of these things. And she was, all right, I have to separate myself from this person. And he would continue to message her and mods and other people, but I believe, I'm not getting this exactly right, but he donated some money, or somebody else did, and they saw her full name. Their full name, and then because of that, they found her address, the person found their address, and now you've got a person who is mentally unstable, possibly violent and hostile, that has your address, knows your full name, and is just out there and around. And this continued it's still continuing. It started in 2015, and all because of just this one mistake. And the last TwitchCon she came to, she didn't feel safe. And I don't blame her. I mean, that's not a good way to feel, not feeling safe in your own home, around, or out, because you don't know all these people and the means that they have or what they could do to get to you. So always really, 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 really don't take this stuff lightly. Don't be like, "Oh, I'm just gonna write it down," and like, go do this. Make sure you don't have your names attached to this. These things, like, it can be very bad, and fortunately for her, it hasn't been, but she's been kind of held hostage by an unhealthy person in guilt and threatening to hurt himself and possibly her.
Yeah, it's definitely.
Sorry, I'm like the heavy one. Like, I make jokes earlier, but then I have all the bad stuff to tell you. So
we're gonna roll into, and I want to make sure that I have enough time for questions. So we're gonna roll through some of this stuff, and if we don't have enough time here, I'll be outside for a little bit to answer as long as we can before we go to the next thing. How many of you use two-factor authentication on Twitch? It's a lot more than last year. I'm proud of you guys.
Last year it was like
a lot. Yeah, what's that?
I did mine before the panel last year.
Oh, yeah. Do you use two-factor authentication on Google, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Discord, World of Warcraft? So many websites and services have this multi-factor authentication, two-factor authentication. It's a interchangeable term. And it's an assistance to being able to, if someone can guess your password because it's your pet's favorite name or the street you grew up on, or just, something very simple, which we do have like a list of those things that, to kind of jog your memory of why you shouldn't pick simple things. The two-factor authentication is able to send like a 6 to 8 or sometimes 12-digit code to your phone and lets you log in with that kind of token. That helps because there's a lot of people who might have a little bit more experience with social engineering, and they can get into your account or find out your security questions, because usually it's simple things like, what's your mother's maiden name, or what's your dog's name, or what city did you grow up in? And those are things that as streamers sometimes we do share very easily, because like someone will be like, "Hey, I'm from Ohio," and you're like, "Oh my gosh, I used to live in Columbus," and then you have those kind of conversations. And if someone malicious is listening in to try to grab information from you, it's possible that they can put in those security questions and then get an email reset sent to them. And
all this stuff goes together because most of the answers to the questions are usually on your Facebook. So if they can get to that, then they have all the answers to those questions. And two-factor, it's also called two-step, which makes sense because it creates another step, something else they need besides just your password. And a quick anecdote on that is a buddy of mine who was on the panel last year. He was really excited. He wanted to try the new Pixelmon stuff on Minecraft. So he hopped into a server, the first one he could find, played a little bit. Turns out he didn't know who the admin of the server was. He was able to get his password for Minecraft. And it was very similar to his Twitch password. So they guessed his Twitch password, used his information that's publicly available, like his email, and they took over his channel. And they broadcasted some stuff that was very against TOS on his channel, and then immediately got banned. And it took him, I think, a week or two to get his channel back. And that's really all it takes. And before I talk more about two-factor, I'm just going to read some of these to you. This is a ranking of 2016's worst passwords, and there's 25 of them. I may not read them all, but 10% of all the passwords they found that were for sale on malicious sites, 10% of people use these passwords. Number one is 123456. 4% of people use that as their password. Number two, password. Number 3 and number 4 are numbers. Number 5 is football. Number 6 is QWERTY. And there's stuff on here like sunshine or dragon or flower. Be a little bit more diligent with your passwords. And if you have any questions, let us know. Use a phrase instead of just a single word. Throw some characters in there. Throw some numbers. Don't make it easy.
Yeah, you don't have to have like the alphanumeric gibberish of you can't pronounce what this is. Usually with like brute force attacks, the best thing, or just in general, is to make something that is relatively nonsensical, but you can remember it. So I'm sure maybe you've seen this comic where it's like correct horse battery stapler, and that is an incredibly secure password. It has nothing to do with you or your family or where you live, or like maybe you actually hate horses. So like it would not make sense that would be your password. Also, don't use that, because when that comic came out, that also like jumped up on the list of commonly used passwords. Do something similar, like take 4 dictionary words, put like an exclamation point in the middle, or like a number at the beginning. You don't have to do leet speak, because those kind of substitutions are very easy for these brute force programs to just, instead of password with an O, it's a 0, and like that takes a nanosecond for them to try to enter that in as well.
That's on the list, by the way. That's number 18, password with a 0.
Don't do that.
So yeah, just a couple things in two-factor, making sure you have more secure passwords. And two-factor is super easy. If you don't know how to do it, come find me. I've done it. You've done it. You did it. Mobile. You did it on mobile.
If I can do it, you can do it.
And next thing I want to talk about too is something called EXIF data. Basically, EXIF data is information that's stored in pictures, like JPEGs. What it is it creates metadata about your photo, which includes the date and time you took it, information like, what's the exposure, what's all this. And this is not just with, high-end cameras, this is also with the camera on your phone. It can also include GPS coordinates. And I will show you guys an example here in a second. And the GPS data that's stored inside the photo is just as accurate as your phone's GPS. You can pretty much pinpoint where exactly that photo took. And by posting these things with that data, you could unknowingly or unintentionally broadcast where you are. Like if we were somewhere, hey, we're here, click share this photo. And most websites help out with this, they'll remove it for you, but it's really easy when they can just type in your GPS data. And like I said, most social media sites will remove it for you. Some places, like cloud storage platforms, they won't remove it because it's just a storage platform. And I wanted to give a specific example about this. How many of you use the Twitch desktop app? The desktop one? Yeah? I talked to them about this before the panel, so they're aware of it now. If you upload a photo, and that's a photo I took when I used to live in DC of the Washington Monument, super easy. You go to your computer, you download the folder, or download the photo, you right-click it, you hit Properties, and all that information's there. If you wanted to type in that really long latitude and longitude into a website that does it for you, it'd show you where the Washington Monument is. So I talked to them about this. I said, hey, are you aware this is happening? And they said that we do now. The advice that they gave me is upload it to another site that strips it or scrape it out yourself, is what they told me. So if you don't know how to do that, I will tell you how to stop this immediately. If you got your phone, whether Android or iPhone or whatever, open your phone app. There should be a settings. We'll do it together. Hopefully it should be off anyway, but some people use it. Go to your phone app, settings. There should be something with like location, GPS, or anything like that, and just switch it to off, because I don't know of anybody who wants that in their photos. Some professional photographers want that, and I could see why, to know where they took the photo and get information about it, but for the normal user,
Yeah, like if you snap a picture and say like, hey, I'm going live with like a smiling face, or your stream setup, and you put it maybe into your server on the Twitch desktop app, like someone can do all of this and find out your house,
and
like your living room.
So as of last week, before I got here, this was still in. I haven't checked it since I've been here. But definitely be wary of where you're posting your photos. If you were here last year, Discord did the same thing. They've now stopped. Thanks. So hopefully they can work on this and get that out of the feature, because I don't see any benefit to it for the community. So, and that's one thing that I want to do, is make everyone aware of this kind of stuff. So hopefully they'll work on it and then they'll get it out of there, because I don't see a reason to keep it in there. Another thing that I want to really close on, and which is new since last time we talked, and then we'll get to some questions. IRL streaming, super fun. I've done it. It's fun. You can do it straight from the Twitch app on your phone. You can interact with your community. I dyed my hair for charity, or my grandma dyed my hair for charity. The last thing I did, I had my dad's selfie stick. Yeah, my dad has a selfie stick, and I used an IRL stream from that, and super fun. But there's a couple things you have to take in consideration there. Especially if you're IRL streaming, if you are outside or if you're going someplace, you're no longer in control of what happens with your surroundings. When you're in your house, when you're streaming, when you're at your desk or anything, you control everything everybody sees. Whether you have a green screen or a super cool shelf with stuff in the background or whatever your backdrop is, you control that and it's not changing. But let's say you want to go outside and walk down the street with your phone and do an IRL stream, you have to be really mindful of that. Businesses, street signs, stuff like that, makes it really easy. If someone wants to do something bad, then they can.
Even be aware of what's in your home. Mail, your
Yes.
IDs, anything like that, because you
Pictures
could be like,
of families and friends, yeah.
You can be like walking around the camera like, oh, here's my house and all this stuff, and like I'm playing with Legos, and there's this, and you could have like your mail out or 2 of your IDs or whatever, like, and it'll be there. And for a second, if you don't pay attention and somebody else sees it, then you've just exposed yourself to more of these things to happen. It's just like, it just takes a second to prepare for it, to prevent something that could be bad to happen.
Just basically switching your mindset into being able to be more aware of your surroundings and more aware of just protecting your privacy and your data, not only for your own benefit, but the benefit of your loved ones as well. They can be targeted too.
Yeah, and with IRL too, regardless of what happens, you're responsible for it as a streamer. It's your channel, and you always want to respect the privacy of others as well. You don't want to do an IRL stream while you're paying for something and your ID's out or something like that. So just be mindful of your surroundings. They're super fun, they're great, but let's say that someone's doing an IRL stream, in Central Park, right? And they say, hey, this guy who has really funny looking hair and has a blue shirt on, he's in Central Park doing crazy stuff. That's all it takes for someone to do something bad. So you really just have to be careful and be mindful.
And there's instances of this. This has happened to streamers where they have police come up to them, or they accidentally stream an accident, and because of that, they get banned for showing violence and things like that. So.
So just remember that you're ultimately responsible for what happens on your channel, and be careful. So that's all we have for the presentation here. Looks like it went off, but we've got some time, I think about 10 minutes left. So if you guys have any specific questions, run up to the mic. I'll get through as many as we can. If you have a question and we can't get to it, I'll be outside for a little bit. I don't want to take up too much time in the room to be respectful for the next people that are coming out. So.
Hi.
I will just, we'll start with the first and then go to the second. And
First, second,
Yep,
first, second,
okay.
yeah.
What's your opinion on the Equifax breach and also the blockchain?
Well, the Equifax breach and blockchain. So with Equifax, it is something that is incredibly scary because this affects every single American who has ever gotten a mortgage, gotten a car loan, gotten a debit
40
card and a credit card.
43 million people affected by the Equifax breach.
It has to be more than that because all of this data that has been collected on us unwillingly, like you have to use a credit card in order to do a lot of things within society nowadays. It's the same as, well, you kind of have to have a smartphone to be able to keep up with your friends and use a GPS. It's a part of the way that our culture and society is evolving. The fact that Equifax has collected this information and was so careless with it because it is such an important and privatized data set of who you are is it's an abomination, and it's something that you can do certain things, like you can call up multiple credit agencies like Equifax and TransUnion and do a credit freeze. That means that you can't easily go into Verizon and get a new cell phone account because they use that information to be able to check out who you are and then open up a new line of credit and everything. So it does make life a little bit more difficult for you, but with that information that has been leaked, those hackers or those malicious people will look at that, they'll try to use your information, oh, you have a credit freeze, on to the next person. So that's the kind of stuff that we've been trying to hammer in anyway. Like, anyone can be targeted, but if you put some of those first lines of defense in, usually they move on because they want to be able to hit someone easier.
There you go. Thank you. I can't see the back mic, so may I have to separate a little bit?
It's okay.
Hello.
Yeah.
I was just wondering what our options are if we do get doxed after. So all this is preventive measures, but after it happens, it happens.
Mhm. A couple things that you can do, and unfortunately, like, once it's out there, if they post it in your chat, there's not a lot that you can do.
Your reaction is important too.
Yes.
Just be very neutral. Be like, all right, that's an address. Ban the person, move on. Don't give them any sort of satisfaction of ending your cast or being frustrated. Maybe take a break, like for a few minutes on an AFK screen and like collect yourself. A lot of the time, these people are just doing this because they want a reaction. And they just want to see how much information they can get because it's a game to them. And so you can take solace in the fact that if someone does have this information, it's usually just them being silly, trying to be like doing fun things, and then they're gonna forget about you and they're gonna move on to someone else because it's just something for them to do.
Gratification.
So if it does happen to you, you don't have to feel like it's the end of the world because 99% of the time it's not going to be.
And then definitely next steps is if that happens, you should try and figure out in your own ways of how they got the information. Like I mentioned, Googling yourself, typing your name in a search engine, looking at these aggregation sites to try and figure out, okay, what happened? Where did things go wrong?
Thank you.
Hi.
Yeah,
Whoa.
you're live.
Hello. Also, I do have a question. It was talked about a little bit, but it's something that I saw a year ago, and I don't still know how to fix it to this day. But someone had talked about it where the girl had a harasser who got her name. I have a similar issue. I don't have a harasser. Well, do I? I don't know yet. Hopefully not. But pretty much when you go to donate to me, you can see my first and last name, and I don't know how to hide that. And PayPal told me if you're going to use this to get donations, you need to put your first and your last name. So I don't know.
Yeah,
if there's a
no,
way
it's
around
within
Yeah.
PayPal, there's something called upgrading to a business account, and there's some paid ones, you don't need to do that. Once you become a business account, you can look up on their FAQ how to do this, and it will take some time because it is like, piecing all these things together, but there is something called a profile. It's like hidden away in like an account dashboard settings and then this and this. So like it is difficult to find, but you can put in just like the first half of your username and then the second half, or like, JessyQuil and then TV at the end or something. And you're able to switch to that profile and make it like your main public-facing profile, and then you can delete your personal information after that because it's not the default
And
one.
there's also a checkbox too that will choose what you display.
Yeah.
So you can display your company name. So I can display
That's it.
MaximusRaeke as opposed to my first and last name as well. And that's within PayPal.
Yeah, it's the business account thing that you have to switch to.
Thank you. I'll go
Yeah.
ahead and do that after.
Yeah, good.
Is there anyone at the back microphone?
Back microphone, please.
Hi, thank you guys so much for this panel, by the way. It's really, really informative.
You're welcome.
I was wondering if you could speak on the crossover between a streamer personality and the entrepreneurial side of it, where you have to write contracts and make agreements and things like that. So is that where like an LLC would come in play?
Yes.
And how do you prevent your name being out there and crossing over into your streamer persona?
Right.
Ask questions. Ask questions of. I had one where I had to sign an agreement, and for tax purposes, because they're in a different country, I had to give them
Yeah, I had to
quite
do
a bit
that
of
too.
info. And it's like, who's going to have this? Where's it going to go? And what assurances are you going to make that I have to do this? But one quick way, like you said, to kind of side skirt this is if you have like an LLC, or depending on how you structure yourself as a business, then that's all it takes, as opposed to like all your personal information.
Yeah, like you get a, hi? Sorry. Yeah, you can get like instead of using your social security number as a private person, you get a tax identity number. And when you become an LLC, and then you have a PO box, so if they want an address of where is your business located, you just put your PO box instead. And if a company has a problem with you having that type of security and privacy, you might not want to work with those people who aren't able to respect your wishes like that.
Can I just follow up on that and
Sure.
ask, at what point, what are the signals you should look for in your streaming career when you're crossing over, at which point you do want to set up like a PO box and make that investment and set up an LLC?
That has a really a lot to do with personal preference
Yeah.
of when you want to do it. I personally don't have a PO box. I don't get anything sent to me. That's okay, because where I live, it's okay. I'm sorry.
It's because you don't have a PO box.
Don't.
It's a circular.
Yeah, you don't have to send me anything, please.
I would suggest like if you start to become serious about streaming and you get affiliateship, you have to put in tax information and legal identification of yourself, and either you can do it as a private person or as your LLC. And so it's just right from the start, right there is how you begin that kind of that workflow.
Thank you.
Hey, you're welcome.
You're welcome.
What's up?
I had a question about more famous and popular streamers. How do they go about protecting themselves? Because we know a lot of information from more popular streamers, especially since if they started way earlier and they know how to protect their identity. Like off the top of my head, I know my favorite streamer's first, last name, and where they live. So
Right.
how do they go about protecting themselves? Because it's like, is this common information?
Well, it's also the same thing that I said earlier, that sometimes having that information out there isn't necessarily a bad thing. Like I used to work in the video game industry as my full-time job, so I was semi-forced to let people know what my name was and where I worked and what city I lived in. And it's like I said before, it's not necessarily a horrible thing to have that information out there, because 99% of the time if someone does find that information out, it's just more of the game for them, and then they move on to their next target. But as long as you have like the first lines of defense of removing yourself from the popular data aggregate websites and keeping your private and public personas separated, don't use the same photos or quotes or information on either one of them, it makes it harder for those people to go into that.
Yeah, and just kind of
Does-
what you said
does that
is
help?
without
Yeah.
them doing this in the beginning, it becomes increasingly more difficult
I
to
mean, it's-
backtrack.
yeah,
So
it's the
the sooner
internet,
you
yeah.
start, the better, because the internet doesn't go away. It's out there. So
Once it's out there, it's out there.
And
You
as a
just have to
follow-up, like-
try to mitigate the damage that is already occurring.
What about like close friends that you have that have maybe like unique names, and then they can kind of trace them back to you? Do you have to let your friend like, hey, don't like use your first and last name just because you know me?
Yeah.
You know.
that's
So,
the thing. You educate your family and friends about it too, and just kind of let them know what could happen, and try to make them understand. And if they do, then they'd be more than happy to help you out with that.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Welcome.
And one more in the back.
I don't know a whole lot about computers, but when you Google yourself, could your cache or like saved websites that you go to a lot?
Yeah, that's how
come
Google
up?
works. It gives you like websites that you like, so use it like an incognito mode.
Right, right. But when you Google yourself, could it come up as like a false like positive with what comes up on your own, like, oh, there's more mac and cheese stuff because that's who I am.
Right, yeah,
or,
like with targeting
my name, my
advertisements.
actual name or like pictures come up because of that.
Yeah, so if you
Yeah.
use incognito mode, it doesn't use any of the information within your cache or your cookies. So it will be just as if some default user in random library is looking up this person for the very first time, and that is the information that you see. So yeah, like make sure that it's in a browser you don't use or incognito in private mode or something. And then you'll be able to see what the average Googler or Binger or whatever
Yeah,
sees.
choose your favorite.
How do you go about taking it off if something you don't want is associated?
The best-
You
yeah.
you contact the website themselves and say, hey, I never authorized this information to be here. I would like it to be removed. And sometimes that's difficult because sometimes they get antsy about it and like, this is public data, blah, blah, blah. Or like, screw you, I could do whatever I want. Like yeah. So if there is something there that you don't like if it's a part of your own personal Facebook, going through and deleting it, and eventually it will get cached out of being in the search engines. But usually, like, once something's on the internet and a bunch of different aggregate websites pick it up, it's really difficult to pick up those pieces and crumbles and try to clean it up.
Thank
And
you.
then 2 more, and then we'll have to get out of here. I don't want to take up too much time, but go ahead.
Okay. Over the past few years, I've seen the rise of password-safe programs like KeyPass, LastPass,
LastPass, yeah.
1Password, things like that. I want to know what is your opinion on those compared to just thinking of a really strong
I
password.
personally use one. That's a great question.
Yeah, I
don't
highly
know-
recommend them.
I don't know any of my passwords anymore.
Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah.
Luckily, there's more than one way to get to them. So if I lose my phone, I can still get to them. I like them. Just personal preference, whether you want to use it or not. Usually, they're more secure than what you can come up with, depending on
Yeah.
whether you use a passphrase or not. But
Yeah,
And
I
they
use one
save it.
myself.
yeah, it's definitely a good point. You could always use one of those. So
Yeah.
Hi.
hello.
Hi. I was doxed in June, and fortunately, it was just a really strong harassment type of situation. I was calm on stream. I made jokes about it, like I make jokes about everything, but I was like dying inside.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And I pretended to spill something. I was like, oh man, I have to clean this up. Oh, I got it on my cat, whatever. And I called the police, and they were like, well, you need to be careful about the information online. Well, thank you, obviously. One question I had, though, is they got my phone number, which I was surprised about but not shocked, but they ended up calling me from my family members' phone numbers.
Oh yeah, there's
Okay.
there's phone spoofing. So like they can pretend that the caller ID is coming from someone that you know. So a lot of scams do that. They try to make it look like, oh, I'm in the same town as you. You pick it up and then it gets like rerouted to the actual phone number or something. And that's the same on the data aggregate websites. If they looked you up and they saw this person might be associated with this 50-year-old woman who has like the same last name, so that's probably their mom. And then they go there and they're able to see her public information of her having a Verizon wireless account from a few years ago. So that one is probably still active. So then they use that to spoof in and make it look like it's your mom calling.
As far as that goes, when someone's like using that information, how do you go about that legally? Like, luckily they harassed me for one night,
Yeah.
and that was it. But if they continue to harass you, like the cops didn't care. They were like, if someone comes to your door with a weapon, call us.
And that's a difficult
Yeah.
scenario because I mean,
That's
none,
the
none of
answer that
us
you're
are
gonna hear,
none of us
yeah.
are lawyers or anything like that. And I can try and give you advice here in a second because we have to go out pretty quick. But there's some things that you can do. But at that point, you have to rely on the professionals because there's not a lot you can do yourself.
Okay.
So let's talk here in a minute after this.
Okay.
Before we leave.
And
But
just one thing I wanted to add real
Yeah.
quick. If you get a P.O. box, don't get one in your town. Get one like the next town over.
Oh,
Yeah,
yes.
that's good
Yeah,
advice.
absolutely.
yeah, thank you guys so much for listening and answering the questions. So I hope you learned something. Thank you guys.